Howdy folks, welcome to Bullish on Farming. Today is May 5th and I am watching a heifer take down thistle. And I don't know if I can get the right angle, but we'll see if she goes after another one. She seems to just be grabbing them, breaking them in half and just consuming them. And they're still, young plants. And they're quite tender relatively to how prickly they do get. And the stalks become more wood-like the more mature the plant gets. But I just wanted to show this because some people are only used to their cattle grazing in a conventional program. And how is that different? Well, every time you turn the cattle out to a fresh section, there is the wide selection of what's available in your pasture, sectioned off in that area, of course. And wow, that heifer, or cow behind that heifer, is just going after thistle. And you can see that the thistle are raining in this tree line here. But why are the cattle going after thistle? Well, like I was saying, how there's the wide array of what's in the diversity of their buffet for that day. They tend to know what that is from their previous paddocks and start to expect a similar serving in the same fashion, whether it be over a day, 2 or 3. I don't want to get in there to spook them off because I want them to keep mowing thistle here. And that's what they're doing. And, because the thistle is still in its very young stage, although it's prickly to us, for some reason, when the cattle have paddocks that are sized down to something that only gives them about 1 to 2 days, maybe 3 of grazing, and they get used to that feed window and how the plants are consumed and their selection decreases over time. When they start to enter new paddocks within that program, they begin to get excited for all of the stuff that's available on day 1. And so that positive move into a fresh paddock has now, created expectations for your animals, which is going to be the freshest first bite of every plant on your farm if you manage recovery periods long enough so that your pasture is ready and bounce back to accommodate your animals. And they're just mowing thistle right now. And if they could take down thistle at this time, I'm happy to do it. Why they're choosing it on their first day in relation to everything else, I don't know. But because I've seen cattle go after thistle when it's still pretty moist in a hydrated plant in its younger stages, cows will eat thistle. Usually I've had to size down the paddocks to 1 day spaces to make them enter a little bit more of a foraging intense demeanor, because when they know that they have an abundance of grass for any given amount of days, they don't feel the need to consume the feed as quickly because they know that there's plenty. When the spaces are smaller and that program has started to reflect the animal that feed is only available and the freshest bite is only available on the first day, and then you move on to the next paddock, their intensity of foraging increases because now they're expecting a limited amount of feed that is sufficient for the day, and animals are more incentivized to start browsing and eating things that they wouldn't choose if they had plenty. And so that's one of the benefits that you get to your grazing efficiency by using daily paddock rotations, is that you get a more even grazing across the diversity of plants in your pasture, and you get a more efficient grazing whereby animals are consuming plants that they typically wouldn't if they were just turned out to a whole field and knew that they had plenty to sustain them for a period of time. And so all of these type of things are things that you pick up along the way and you use to your advantage. And people who are worried about grazing mature pasture that's gone to seed, it's because they haven't sectioned off pieces of their pasture and, managed their cattle in that way. And, early on, right now, we're doing multi-day paddocks. I've mentioned this, 2 to 3 day paddocks. I started with a large section that probably would have sustained 8 days, and I ran them for 5, and that was a bit lighter of the impact that I wanted on that area. But that was the first paddock in this field, and it's a very large field. So just figuring out how to size it with the girls, and I don't knock it down to an exact science. I just measure out yards by walking, and I size it out generally that way and use my eye to evaluate the impact that we're getting so it's at a desired point. So this is the paddock that the cows just moved out of, and didn't have to move the water trough. Every 2 paddocks is watered by 1 water move. So at this pace, it's 6 to 7 days I don't have to move the water. But when I do, I got to drain the tub, move it on over to sustain another 2 paddocks. It's a pretty good deal, especially when you get to move your water and that you get to move the impact that the animals have around water troughs and more fixed position necessities in your paddock. You get to move those around and distribute that impact. And you can see as I'm walking what we're leaving behind. At the shortest it's 6 inches, and you got 8, then you got 10. But pretty much for 1/3 of the paddock, I'm seeing, the grass nipped up, square edges, and we're looking for the animals to take the top half of the plant and move on. 1/3 going to seed, that's fine, so that we have a blend of maturity in the different species of plants in our pasture. And we could do with more diversity in our pastures, but we're in year 1 and we're going to build that. The beauty about mob grazing is that grazing certain areas of your farm will seed other areas of your farm, because the cattle will consume feed in that field, move on to another field, and then seed the next field by dropping the seeds in their manure. And you could see some of the taller grasses gone to seed head, and that's great. I love to see that. You obviously don't love an over mature field, but it's natural. And then if you look on the left and right, you can see how many of the seed tops have either been, either the plant has been trampled down onto the ground, the stem is broken and the seed will drop into the soil, or the cows have nipped the top half of the plant, ingested that seed, and they'll drop it in their manure. In a few days time, that seed germinates, and you're consistently seeding your fields with the same animals that are consuming from it. So you're giving back to your land in that way. And we all know, those of us who are crazy about mob grazing understand the benefits of your desired animal impact on the land and the fertility of your soil. And it's an absolute game changer, and that's what we love to do with our animals here. We love to keep them moving. We love to keep them clean. We love to keep their feed fresh every day. We like that feed to be the most dense way of feeding the animal in nature's design, which is rooted vegetation and soil. And we want them eating the top half of those plants because there's the most energy and protein in the top half of a plant. And we don't want to be overgrazing our pastures and hinder its ability to provide that nutrition. We want to set our pastures up for success by managing the grazing of our fields so that in a desired recovery rest period, our fields have bounced back and are fully prepared to handle stock density of your herd. And that's really all it is in simplicity. Simple in principle, but not easy in practice all the time, because you do have to have the right amount of land. Or you could look at it the other way, you got to have the right amount of animals. Because, you know, everyone would love to think they can run a few hundred head of cattle, but you need the land for that, especially if you're going to offer them a forage-based lifestyle that reflects how they would be living season round in the wild. And you know, you don't have to do that. We're not saying that everyone should be doing that, but that's what we have a passion and enthusiasm for sharing on this channel, and the relationship we have in farming with the ecology of the planet. So it always feels good on a fresh move. You know, you feel so rich offering your cattle long, green, fresh grass. And it's an absolute blessing. Thanks for stopping by, folks. God bless you all. We'll see you on the next one.